Hey, how's it going everybody? NuttyNu here, and we're here for another video. I'm going to give some tips and tricks on just some things that I've done in the past with my bike and what has really helped me out. So I'm going to split the video in two categories. I'm going to go over bike, what you should do to your bike first, and then the next step is how you should prepare yourself, what you should bring, what you should have, what you shouldn't have, and stuff like that. So we'll break it down to two different categories. Alright, so we'll start off with the bike. The most important thing about your bike is, even if you're on a sport bike, you got to make sure all your maintenance is up to date. So all your maintenance is basically, your air filter, all your oil changes, all your fluid, and just make sure everything's up to date. Make sure you have your brake pads, everything, there's no wear and tear on your bike. Just do a full inspection, a quick inspection of your bike, and make sure your bike's ready to roll. And it doesn't matter if you're doing like a 20-day trip or if you're doing like a weekend trip, whether it's 1,000 miles or if you're doing 10,000 miles. Just make sure your bike, the maintenance, all your maintenance is up to date. Next thing you want to do for your bike is you also want to check your tires. So let's say you're just doing a weekend trip, you may not need the best tire, but if you're planning to do like a 2 weeks trip of 5,000 miles of traveling, you might want to consider having a fresh new pair of tires. And I'm not going to get into more details on which tires you should get, but every bike is different. For me personally, I run the Michelin Road 3s. It's a good all-around tire and they work good in rain, and the main important thing is that they last a good amount of miles. My Michelin Road 3 lasts a good 7,000 to 8,000 miles. Just depends on what I'm doing. All right, the next one of the most important thing that I have on my bike, and it's by far one of the most useful thing that I have installed on my bike, is that nowadays we all have smartphones, we all have cameras, electronics, and we have to charge them some way while we're on the road. So what I have done to my bike is I install a 12-volt socket. There's lots of different styles on how you can do it and how you can install one. Mine is basically just a regular 12-volt socket that you have in your car where you put your cigarette lighter in, and it's basically just wired up to my battery, and it's hot, it's power on constantly. So if I have anything plugged to it, it'll charge it up. It doesn't matter if my bike is off or my bike is on. That's one way of doing it, and then there's also different methods of doing it. And like I said, just do a bit of research on it, but just make sure you have some way to charge your electronics with a USB port and stuff like that. That's very, very important, because you don't want to be running around and find out that your phone's dead and you can't charge up your phone while you're 200 miles away from the nearest place. And for me, mostly important thing about me is my GoPros and all my electronics. I can charge them up just by having that socket. The next thing that's also very important to me is by far one of the best investment I've done is my Corbin seat. It was about 300 bucks, but like I said, you don't have to go with Corbin. You just got to get a different type of seat, a different seat that will be much more comfortable than your normal stock seat. Most of these sport bikes, the seats is really thin, padded, and like I say, it's more oriented to track racing. It's not meant for comfort riding. So upgrade your seat to something else, or they sell these seat pads where you can just put it on top of your existing seat, and it acts like a cushion for your seat when you're sitting down. And it really helps on those long rides, especially when you're doing like 300 miles non-stop or whatever you're doing for the day. Now this next one here is just an optional. You can do it, or if you don't do it, but for me, since I was doing track racing for a while, I had the Vortex adjustable rear sets, and yes, they make an incredible difference. They provide good grips, and also if you're tall or you're short, you can also adjust the Vortex up and down. And for me, it really made a difference, because when I took off to my California trip, I had the Vortex adjusted very high so that I could have a better clearance when I was racing. And about 300 miles into the trip, I lowered them, and golly, they made a big difference. I lowered them to the lowest point where my knees won't be so bent up and it'll be more relaxed, and it makes a big difference. So it's very optional. Vortex, you're running 200 bucks and used to 300 bucks, so you can look into investing in some rear sets if you want. If you don't want to, that's optional. I would just recommend don't buy any cheap ones from eBay, because I've done it before and it's not worth it. So don't do that. One of the things you should also consider when you're touring your bike, if you also want to invest in a cramp buster. It's basically a little piece that goes on your handlebar that helps you so that you're not putting a lot of pressure when you're gassing the throttle. And trust me, it's like 20 bucks and it's worth 20 bucks, man. It's get the cramp buster. It's worth it, and like I say, it's gonna help you on those long rides, and it's gonna take a lot of stress off your hand, and you can be more relaxed. So the thing you want to have on your bike all the time is if you're doing any of these long trip, maybe if you're doing a weekend trip where it's less than 500 miles, you don't need this. But if you're looking to do more than 1,000 miles or 6,000 miles, you definitely want to bring your brush, your chain cleaner, and your chain lube. All three of those needs to be in your needs to be with you, because you want to clean out your bike. Your chain is very, very important, and it's gonna get dirty. It's gonna pick up dust and all kind of crap on the way there. So you want to clean that thing about every 500 miles or so. We're kind of moving towards personal stuff, but you definitely want to have a tank bag to carry your stuff. You want to have a saddlebag, and like I said, there's tons different brands of saddlebags. Just pick one that's good. I made a video where I'll put a description, the link, where how I pack my bike up and how I have my saddlebags set up and stuff like that. So I'll link the video to that. You can check out that video. But you want to have a saddlebags and tank bags. And like I say, as far as mounting it on your bikes, there's just so many different ways of doing it. For me, I use bungee cords and ratchet straps, and like I say, you just kind of have to find out how you want to do it on your bikes, and it's gonna be different. One thing I would not recommend for anybody is if you're doing any long trips, let's say more than a weekend, or more than a week or more than 500 miles, is I wouldn't recommend carrying a backpack. When you're riding and you're carrying that backpack, and especially if you're on a sport bike where you're already in a crouching position, that backpack is going to put a lot of strain on your back. So if you plan to carry that backpack, either have that strapped down to your tail or with your saddlebags, or just don't carry a backpack at all. For me, I never carry a backpack when I do any long tours. The only time I do carry a backpack is if I'm commuting to work, or if I'm running around town, or if I'm going to the bike nights and stuff like that. And once you have your bike all pre-checked and all that good stuff done, and once you have all your gear loaded up, the last thing you also want to do is you want to make sure your tire pressures are up to the specs, and also you also want to adjust your suspensions. A lot of folks lack their suspension, but like I say, when you're putting, at least for me, I'm putting at least another 100 pounds of weight on my bike, so you definitely want to adjust your suspension, either stiffen it or however to your preference. Again, I'm not going to get into more details of that. You can do a little bit more research, but you definitely want to adjust your suspension to the proper specs so that it can accommodate all that weight that you just added onto your bike. So the part two we're going to get into now is what you can do to better yourself when you're doing these kind of trip for the ride. The thing is, you definitely, if you're doing a long ride, for me, I actually experienced this, you want to have a spare key. For me, when I did my California trip, I had a spare key with me, and guess what? It actually came in handy because my key broke down in California, and if I didn't have that spare key, I would have been like, I would have been stuck there, and it would have cost me probably $1 billion to ship me a new key. So have a spare key. For me, I'm gonna have 2 spare keys from now on, since that happened to me once. Next thing you also want to have in your saddlebags is you want to have your basic tools. For me, I don't bring a whole set of tools, but I do have all my basic tools. For the Hondas, you have your regular metrics, your 10, 12, 14, 16 sockets, your basic L keys, your basic screwdrivers, flathead. You want to have a little set of that, and like I say, it's gonna worth the weight of it because you might have to use it one day. So have all that, have all your basic sockets. Bring that with you, because like I said, you never know, you might be, you might need to do an oil change on the road, or something might be loose and you might need to tighten it. So bring that with you. Like I said, just the basic tool sets that you should, kind of gather yourself and make it a special set just for your bike. All right, next thing you can do is to better yourself. You definitely want to wear gears. I don't care if you're in California or if you're in Alaska. You always want to wear gears, because you never know how the weather is going to change. Since I live in Alaska and there's like 90% chance it might rain, my gears are fully waterproof, whereas some people like to wear leathers, and then they have a different set of gear where it's their rain gear, where they throw on top of their existing gear. So you can do whichever way you like. I just prefer to have all my gears to be waterproof, where I can just be riding and all of a sudden 5 miles up the road it starts to rain, I can just keep on scrolling. And yes, that does happen in Alaska. And also in regard to gears, for me, I like to wear anything that's super bright, so either red, orange, white, or anything that's bright. I never have anything that's dark because you want to be visible while you're out riding. So next thing when you're doing these trips is, you know, don't push yourself. I mean, when I was doing some of these trips, I was doing like 600-700 miles a day. So if you get tired, definitely stop and rest. Take a moment to stretch, and also take a moment to enjoy, you know, the scenery of what you're doing or where you're going. Just stop and rest, drink some water, relieve yourself, and just eat some snacks, and, you know, stretch it out. Because if you do that, it's going to help you much longer in the longer run, unless you're on some kind of time crunch like the Iron Butt race. This next step here is something that I personally do to myself, but like I say, you could be different because you're a different rider. But for me, I like to avoid riding at night. I mean, my eyesight is kind of somewhat bad. I do wear glasses, and I don't like driving or riding at night, so I always avoid riding at night. And it's not just because of that. You know, if you ride at night, there's a chance of you know, hitting into wildlife, or some kind of wildlife might not see you. I mean, for downstates, you guys are messing with you guys are messing with deers and stuff like that. But for up here in Alaska, we're messing with moose and all that big animal. And like I say, it's just better to avoid riding at night if you can. If you do run into where you're running into night, you know, try to hit the nearest hotel or wherever you plan to stop at, or your next campground. Just call it a day, and like I say, call it a day, get some rest, and start over tomorrow. You know, that's something I would do. So, you know, avoid riding at night if you can, because it's pretty crazy, especially if you're in a big city too, and you're riding at night and there's like cars are just driving and they don't see you, they're gonna smash you up. Next thing you also want to do is for any of your important documents such as license, insurance, any important documents, you know, if you have if you're crossing borders, Canada's or whatever, and passport, you want to have all that important documents stashed in a Ziploc bag or something that's waterproof in case it does rain, or in case your rain gear or your rain bag does fail. You want to have all that stuff protected. This next step is to better yourself, and like I say, this is something you can do. And that's to bring some kind of food along with you. You always want to bring some kind of food or snacks. Even if you're those kind of people that like to go out and eat instead, you always want to bring some kind of food and snack with you, just in case you do break down on the road and there's nobody there. You do have some kind of food to eat. This next step here really depends on what you're doing and how far you're going, but you know, you can decide if you want to bring extra gas or not. For me, I do carry a 1-gallon gas jug with me all the time. It depends though. If I'm just doing within anywhere from 100-mile radius where my home is, I usually don't bring it. But if I plan on doing any longer trips, I just bring it just in case. If you're not sure, you know, it's better to be safe than sorry. Just bring some kind of sort of extra reserve fuel with you. Another tip I like to tell people to do is, you want to wake up early, and you also want to start the day early and fresh. I like to start the day really early, around 7 to 8 a.m. You know, get my rest late in before that night, and then wake up early. And I always enjoy riding early because there's less traffic, and you're also waking up with everything. You know, you're waking up with the animals, the sunrises, you get that fresh air, and like I say, it's so worth it. So wake up early to start your day, and like, so you could get to your destination earlier, and you know, let's say by afternoon you can just kind of chill out or do whatever you want to do in that town or the next place that you're going to. Next step is, you know, have a credit card or have cash, or you know, you should always have both of you. For me, I always like to carry at least $100 in cash and have some kind of backup credit card that I don't use unless I really have to, let's say. The other thing you want to do is also insurance. So for me, when I'm in town, my bike has just liability. But you know, if I'm planning to do some kind of long ride, like when I did in California, when I rode to California, what I did was I activated my insurance for my bike, and I activated to full insurance just so that it's fully covered just in case anything happens. And also on top of the insurance, if you're a, you know, most folks nowadays have a cell phone. So if your cell phone is not set to be international or whatever, or if it's just set for local, you might want to activate your phone service so that when you do call out of state or wherever you are, you're not gonna get that extra bill. And most of the time when you activate it, they're not gonna even charge you anything unless. And the last few tips I just want to say is, don't rush it. For me, when I did some of my rides, I really rushed it, and if I was to look back nowadays, I would say I would have taken it more slower. So don't rush the ride, enjoy the ride. And again, it's not the destination, it's how you get to the destination that makes it fun. And again, don't be so luxury. You don't have to have the best bike in the world. You don't have to have the best gear in the world. Make the best of what you have and make it work for you. Is that you don't ever want to plan too much. Just go ahead and have a basic mindset of what you want to do, and just go ahead and do it, because if you plan too much, you're just basically living by the Bible. And for me, when I did my California trip, I planned way too much, where I was planning where my next stop will be here, and guess what? It was over there, over here. So never plan too much, and just kind of enjoy yourself. And it's always better to just kind of wing stuff and just let the flow go, and go with the flow. You know what I mean? Go with the flow. And then last thing, when you have all your bike loaded up and ready to go, what I always like to do is, when I have my bike ready to go, I always go for a quick test run around the block or around a couple blocks. So I have my bike fully loaded, as if I'm ready to go tour. I go out, spin around the block a little bit, make sure everything's not gonna fall off, and make sure there's no issue. And then I go back home and I cover my bike, and then the next day, boom, I'm ready to go. I just turn on the bike, throw my leg over, and I'm ready to ride. So all in all, I hope this really helped you guys. If you guys have any questions, or if you guys think I'm missing anything, please leave me a comment and let me know what's up. And until next time, I'll see you then. Bye bye.